I woke up at 3:14 a.m. to the kind of quiet that sounds like the house is holding its breath. The digital clock glowed weak blue on the dresser. 3:14. The numbers looked like a little door you could fall through if you stared too long. My throat felt dry, so I slipped out of bed. Daniel was on his side, turned away from me, the steady lift and fall of his back under the blanket. The room smelled faintly like laundry and the lemon cleaner I use on Saturdays. The carpet was cool on my feet. I didn't bother with the lamp. There's a nightlight by the bathroom door. It makes a small, patient circle on the hall floor, enough to keep you from stubbing a toe. I opened the bathroom door and let the light slice into the dark. Water, hands, face. The ordinary choreography of being awake when no one else is. When I stepped back into the hallway, he was there. Daniel. Standing with his head lowered like he was listening for a quiet that hadn't happened yet. His arms hung loose at his sides. In the nightlight, the shape was perfectly him. The slope of the shoulders, the hair that always sticks up at the crown, the way his t-shirt falls a little long. "Hey," I whispered. "You okay?" He lifted his face. Not much, just enough for the light to gather on the line of his cheek and the edge of his mouth. "Bathroom," he said. The word came out flat, like he'd set it down between us rather than said it. I pressed myself to the wall to let him pass. When he brushed my shoulder, his hand was colder than it should have been. I waited in the doorway. I don't know why. Habits you don't know you have come out at night. I listened for the familiar little choreography again. Sink, drawer, flush. Water ran, then stopped. No other sounds. "Be quick," I said, still a whisper. "It's cold." No answer. I pushed the bathroom door open with my foot. The light was on. The sink was dry. The mirror was keeping the room to itself. There wasn't anyone there. A slow ache bloomed under my ribs. I turned back toward the bedroom. Daniel was in bed, in the same position, the same slow lift and fall. I stood in the doorway and watched the rhythm of his breathing until it drew me in like a metronome. Then I got back under the blanket and faced the wall, the way you do when shadows feel close. I kept my eyes open until the window started to gray. The next day, the house seemed too bright. Sunlight showed every edge, every bit of dust I'd missed. The ordinary proof that nothing is wrong. Daniel poured coffee and kissed the top of my head. "You look like you didn't sleep." "I didn't," I said. "You were up." He frowned. "I wasn't up." "In the hallway," I said. "You walked past me and said bathroom. You touched my shoulder." "Sleepwalking?" He tried to smile, but it wrinkled wrong at the corners. "You know I don't do that." I pressed my hand to the place he'd touched. The skin there still felt cold. I told myself I was tired. I told myself people have dreams that open their eyes for them. I told myself a lot of things while I scrubbed the counter the way I do when I want the world to obey. That evening we acted like ourselves. We cooked. We cleaned up. We watched a show with people who say exactly what they mean. When he laughed, the sound was warm and uncomplicated, and I felt stupid for the way I'd watched our hallway all day. We went to bed at 11:02. At 1:47, I woke to footsteps. Slow, careful, like someone who knows where the creek is and is trying to step around it. I kept still. Daniel's breath at my back was even and warm. The steps paused outside the door. "Daniel," I said, not very loud. Silence. Then, almost against the door itself, soft as if it didn't want to be heard, my name. Not the way he says it now, the way he said it when we first met. Higher. A little amused, even when nothing is funny. Gooseflesh rose along my arms. "Do you need something?" I said. Silence again. Then the steps moved away, not toward the bathroom, down the hall, past the thermostat's blue glow, toward the front of the house where the night lives closer to the ground. I slid out of bed. This time I turned the lamp on. Daniel made a soft sound and rolled onto his back, His eyes opened a sliver. "Hmm? There's someone in the house," I said. He sat up too quickly and the room lurched. We did the ritual you do when you need the world to be the same. Lights, doors, windows, closets. Nothing. No open windows, no broken locks, no fallen frame, no cat we don't own knocking something off a shelf. We turned the lights off again, and the house became a diagram of itself in the dark. He was asleep in minutes. I lay there and stared at the ceiling until the nightlight felt like it was thinking. A week isn't long unless you're waiting for it. The days were fine: work, emails, groceries, the steady hum of the refrigerator filling the spaces where anxiety would like to be. The nights found their own shape. Sometimes I heard the steps. Sometimes I woke because the nightlight had gone out and come back. Twice I felt a hand touch my shoulder in the hall, polite, like he always is when we pass in close spaces. And twice I found Daniel deep in the kind of sleep you can't fake. On Wednesday, I plugged the nightlight into the outlet across from the bathroom instead of beside it. It glowed brighter there, like it was relieved. On Thursday, I checked the hallway camera we'd bought when the neighbor's packages went missing last winter. The app showed a gray bar where ours should have been. A neat block of nothing between 1:32 and 3:05 a.m. At 3:01, a single frame. Me in the bathroom doorway, hair wrong with sleep, the bedroom door behind me a little open, and along the wall a vertical smear that could have been a shadow or a person moving too slowly to be a person. I didn't show Daniel. I didn't want the conversation where he says the camera glitched, and I say cameras don't believe in ghosts, so they can't make them up. On Friday, I changed the thermostat to 68 because the nights kept finding my bones. Saturday was good. We went to the farmer's market. We didn't buy anything we needed. We came home with bread that looks like sculpture and flowers that wanted a better house than ours. We pretended to pick a movie and then fell asleep on the couch instead. At 3:03, a sound woke me. Not a step, not a door. Something like a sleeve brushing a door jamb. I lay still. The room's dark was softer with both of us in it. The nightlight's circle looked like a coin waiting to be picked up. "Daniel," I whispered. He breathed the same way he does when he's pretending to be asleep. Except he wasn't pretending. I could feel the heavy slack of him. Something moved in the hall. A shadow separated itself from the other shadows and considered the doorway. Then it stepped forward into the patient circle of the nightlight. "Bathroom," it said, softer this time, trying the newer way. I didn't move. I held my breath until it hurt. The shadow turned its head, careful and exact, like a hinge tested by someone who never owned a hinge before. It looked at me, not into the bed, at me. I waited for the world to do something I could use. The nightlight flickered and went out. The house inhaled. In that small darkness, I felt the space beside my shoulder get colder, as if something leaned close enough to figure out the size of me. The light came back. The doorway was empty. I turned the lamp on. There were damp footprints on the carpet leading from the door to where I stood, and then nowhere. Each toe was careful, the kind of print you make when you're trying not to leave one. I touched one and my finger came away dry. Daniel sat up, blinking. "Look," I said. He squinted. "I don't see anything." I pointed at the carpet. He leaned closer and then frowned in the way he does when he doesn't want to see what he's seeing. "Maybe you spilled water," he said. "In my sleep?" He didn't answer. He got out of bed and checked the bathroom, the hallway, the kitchen. Everything was itself. When he came back, he put a hand on my shoulder, warm where the other had been cold. "We're both tired," he said. "We're making shapes out of nothing." "I don't think nothing can make my name sound like that," I said. We didn't sleep again. The next morning I found something new. On the back of the black t-shirt Daniel slept in, right at the shoulder blade, there was a pale print the size of a hand. Like someone had leaned on him with fingers that didn't understand warmth. He said it was flour from the bread. I said the bread hadn't touched his back. We didn't talk for an hour. Then we did the thing couples do when the thing that's wrong isn't between them, but still wants to be. We put the laundry in and argued about nothing until the house felt like it had its shape again. That night, I plugged the nightlight back into its original outlet. At 3:11, the thermostat clicked like a tongue against a tooth. Then the house was quiet in a way that made the quiet before it sound like noise. A sound against the wall, a careful step, the soft click of picture frames settling against their nails. One, then two, then three, like teeth deciding what kind of smile to make. I sat up. The figure stood in the doorway again. The shape was exactly Daniel's. The stillness wasn't. "Come back to bed," I said before I knew I would say it. The words felt old in my mouth, like something I'd said in rooms that are gone now. The figure took a single step toward me. It stopped where the carpet remembers a hand on my shoulder. Then it turned its head toward the bed, toward Daniel, and tilted it the way he does when he's trying to read small print without his glasses. It smiled, a tiny smile like I'd told it a joke it already knew. "Daniel," I said louder, "wake up." He did. He always does when I say his name like that. He sat up and rubbed his eyes and looked at me and then at the doorway. "What?" he said. I looked back. The doorway was empty. "Nothing," I said, and hated the word as soon as it left me. On Monday, I bought a new bulb for the nightlight. On Tuesday, I moved the camera to the opposite wall to catch a better angle on the doorway. On Wednesday, I didn't sleep at all. On Thursday, I dreamed with my eyes open. In the dream, the hallway was longer, the thermostat was farther away, the nightlight was at the end like a winter sun. A man stood under it, facing away. He had Daniel's walk, if you can call the way someone stands a walk. When I said his name, he turned, and his face was the same as my memory of my mother's voice when she said I was being silly. On Friday, I decided to stop being silly. I unplugged the nightlight and told the house it could keep its dark. At 2:58, I woke to the sound of water. Not a sink, not a shower. The sound of water that is not where it belongs. I went to the bathroom and turned the light on. Dry. I checked the kitchen. Dry. I stood in the hallway and listened, and the sound was everywhere and nowhere, like a crowd a floor below you in a building that doesn't have another floor. "Claire," a voice said, the old way again, the way he said it when we first met, when saying it meant he was smiling even when I couldn't see him. I turned, and he, Daniel, stood at the other end of the hallway, at the edge of what the dark would admit. He took a step toward me. The carpet was quiet. His face was careful and exact. "Bathroom," he said quietly, like we were sharing a joke. Behind me in the bedroom, Daniel stirred. "You okay?" he said, his voice thick with sleep. I didn't turn around. The figure in the hall lifted a hand and set it lightly against the wall as if testing how walls worked. The thermostat's blue made his knuckles look deep. "Claire," he said again. This time the syllable didn't sit flat. It tried on a question and liked it. I took one step back into the bedroom doorway. The figure took one forward. We did that twice more, like children learning the rules of a game neither of us had played. Then the hallway went colder by a degree I could feel with my teeth. The bathroom mirror sang with a fog that hadn't been there a breath before. On the glass, letters drew themselves with the hesitance of a hand that had to remember how. 3 strokes, then 4. Then a short crossing line that made the whole thing a warning. Not him. My mouth made a sound that wasn't a word. I reached back without turning and found Daniel's wrist. Warm, the warmth of a person who belongs. The figure took one last step, then it stopped. It looked at the mirror. It looked at Daniel in the bed. It looked at me. If it could have sighed, it would have. The picture frames clicked. 1, 2, 3. The house rearranged its smile. The light in the thermostat blinked once and went dark. When it came back, the doorway was empty. The mirror cleared like a decision being rescinded. The warning was gone. I turned on every light in the house and kept them on until the sun made them look silly. We moved through Saturday like people who are practicing being awake. We went to the store for things we didn't need. We ate in a place with a chalkboard menu and strangers having easy conversations. We went home and didn't know where to put our hands. "Do you want to leave?" Daniel asked that evening. Hotel, my sister's, anywhere. I want to know which one of you I wake up next to, I said, and laughed in a way that made both of us flinch. We went to bed at 10:57, like going earlier would help. At 3:14, I woke to my name in the air, said the newer way, the way he says it now, the way that belongs here. I turned over and looked at him in the half-light. He was on his back, mouth a little open, breathing, the steady breath of someone who trusts the room. From the hallway, the same voice said, "Bathroom. Exact, perfect, practiced." I stared at the man in my bed and counted his breaths. I didn't look at the doorway. I didn't move. I waited. The carpet outside the door sighed under a foot that had learned how to be quiet in our house. Another step. Another. It stopped where the cold remembers a hand on my shoulder. "Come back to bed," I said finally, eyes still on the man who slept like he'd earned it. The thing in the hall waited. It waited so long that I felt the waiting like a weight in my chest. Then the nightlight, which I hadn't plugged in, glowed once from the outlet, like the house was remembering its lines. I turned my head at last. The doorway was empty. The house exhaled. The picture frames clicked once, very softly, as if teeth settling after deciding not to bite. Daniel shifted behind me and pulled me a little closer, half asleep. "Cold," he murmured. "Yeah," I said. We didn't leave the next day, or the day after that. People think the decision to stay is brave or stupid, but sometimes it's just the shape of your life refusing to move. Sometimes I check the camera footage and find the neat gray bar where the night should be. Sometimes I wake with the sense of a hand on my shoulder that cooled me but didn't bruise. Sometimes I see the word that isn't there anymore, spelled in the corner of my vision, like condensation you can wipe away and still feel. Mostly, I lie very still and listen to two kinds of breathing. The man beside me, warm and heavy, and mine, and the other, farther away, patient in the hallway, learning the ways of our house one careful step at a time.